Hello, beautiful human. Welcome to Inner Space. I'm Danielle YS, the founder of Inner Eye Wellness Institute, an astrobiologist turned grief doula and joy coach. Inner Space is a place to nurture your life's journey so that you can connect with who you really are and lead the life you were born to live. Whether it's life or death, work or play, solitude or connection, inner space is where true life begins. On this episode, we are exploring grief and loss, and specifically embracing grief and loss and the whole journey that comes with it. We're doing this in part in honor of National Grief Awareness Day, which is on August 30th each year, and also in part because I am a grief doula. Now, when I say grief doula, I'm sure a lot of you are saying, what is a doula? What is a grief doula? And why would anyone want to be doing this job? Well, a doula is a person who provides emotional, physical, spiritual, and practical support to somebody before, during, and after some of life's biggest transitions. Doulas are not medical professionals. They are companions and space holders. There are a number of different kinds of doulas that span the big transitions of life. And when I say big transitions of life, I'm not talking about going to a new school, learning to drive, getting into your first romantic relationship. There are things that go even deeper than that. So there are birth doulas who support people during the birthing process, from planning to postpartum. There are death doulas who provide end-of-life support, primarily focused on the person who is dying, but also providing support, emotional, physical, spiritual, practical, for those around the person who is dying. And then there are grief doulas, which is what I am. Grief doulas provide bereavement support in the case of loss of life for the people who are around the person that has died. Grief doulas also support anyone who's going through the grieving process, regardless of what the grief is for or what they've lost. And we'll get into that a little bit deeper, but in a nutshell, grief isn't all about death. So we've covered what a doula is. We've talked about what a grief doula is. Now the question of why anyone would want to be a grief doula. Well, for me, it's because of my own journey and my own story. I currently am a grief doula who is doing what she loves to do on a daily basis. I talk with people, I connect with people, I offer them holistic tools and practices that help them get to know themselves deeper and help them release a lot of emotions that have been there for a long time and who, without this work, would probably feel underwater at the bottom of the pit, the darkest, deepest, scariest parts of life, because that's where I was. It wasn't always this rosy, this fun, this exciting. A couple of years ago, I was thrown into that pit of despair. Now, my own grief journey started when I was 3 years old and lost my father. But it wasn't until I was about 25 years old that I even realized I needed to grieve. And even at that point, it was still not exactly clear what I needed to do. But through this process of being thrown into the pits of despair, the darkest, deepest places, I started to learn that it was okay to lean into the scary parts of life rather than constantly running away from them. I lost a relationship, I lost a home, I lost a dream, I lost a bunch of friends. And as I was trying to get out of that space or just understand what was going on, the thing that provided me the most relief and the most understanding of myself in the situation was just sitting with it, witnessing all of the pain, all of the despair, all of the discomfort, and being okay that it was there. From this journey, I learned to accept myself. I learned to accept everything that life has to offer and every way that I respond to it. There's no shoulds, there's no have tos. It's just what's here and what's present right now. So, back to the question of why would anybody want to be a grief doula? I am a grief doula because I know that grief is one of the most powerful invitations back to a fuller life, a life of deeper meaning, a life of deeper purpose, a life that's aligned with who we really are. So that's why I do this work, because it's way, way too easy for us to turn away from the difficult and painful emotions of grief and loss, when what we all really need to do is learn the tools to help us lean in and explore safely. That's what inner space is all about. Self-exploration, so that we can clear out all that old stuff that's no longer serving us and make a more spacious place within us so we can be who we really are. So we talked about a grief doula being there for bereavement support in the case of end of life. But grief, again, is about so much more than death. I mentioned in my story that I lost a relationship. I lost an identity. I lost a home. I lost friends. But the only one of those that was loss of life was 25 years previously, losing my dad. So grief can come because of any kind of loss that we feel deeply in our bones. And going through life and being a human is inherently in itself a journey of accumulating losses. I'll say that again because it's a big statement. Life is an accumulation of losses, big and small, ones that we know and ones that we don't even recognize. Grief can be a loss of a loved one, something big, loss of a relationship, a chapter of life, a pet, an identity. It can also be something really small, like the choice between eating a sandwich or eating a salad for lunch. But the thing that we all really tend to do with loss is turn away from it, rather than lean in and discover all of the treasures that are there. So we need to stop running, rejecting, and turning away from loss, and allow ourselves to grieve, especially when it's uncomfortable. There's a story that I would like to share, and it's the story of Kissa Gautami. It's poignant, and it's a famous tale from Buddhist literature. It illustrates the impermanence of life and the universality of suffering and this discomfort that we feel around grief. It's often told as an example of the Buddhist teachings on compassion and wisdom. Kissa Gautami was a woman who lived during the time of Gautama Buddha. She was married and had a young son whom she loved dearly. Tragedy struck her life when her only child fell ill and died at a very young age. Kissa Gautami was consumed by grief and refused to accept the reality of her son's death. She carried his lifeless body around, hoping that someone could help her bring him back to life. In her desperation, she heard about Gautama Buddha, who was known for his wisdom and compassion. She thought that he might have the power to bring her son back to life. So, clutching her lifeless child, she went to the Buddha and begged him to revive her son. Seeing her distress, the Buddha understood that she was not yet ready to accept the natural cycle of life and death. He told her that he could help her, but first, she needed to complete a task. he handed her a mustard seed and instructed her to bring back a mustard seed from a household that had never experienced death. Kisagatami was filled with hope and went from house to house, asking for a mustard seed while explaining her situation. However, in each household, she was met with the realization that death was part of everyone's life. Every family had experienced loss, and no household was untouched by death. Slowly, Kisagatami began to understand the universality of suffering and the impermanence of life. She realized that her pain was not unique, and that death was an inevitable part of the human experience. With this newfound wisdom, she returned to the Buddha, surrendered her son's body, and became one of his followers. The story serves as a reminder that suffering is an intrinsic part of life. It's necessary. Loss is necessary, and grief is necessary. And above all else, accepting that it's part of life. Through that understanding and acceptance, we can find a way to transcend it and find that deeper sense of self, of purpose, of meaning, and do the things that we really love, the things that we were really born to do. So I don't tell this story because I want to convert anybody to Buddhism, far from it. I tell this story as an illustration of why it is so important to do this work and to learn the tools that we need in order to move through this process safely. In the story of Kisagatame, what do you think would have happened if she had this realization of the universality of suffering and that loss and death was a part of everybody's life, and then had no one to turn to, no one to learn from, no one to learn with? That's why, if you're looking for a grief doula or someone you know and love could benefit from one, schedule an online breakthrough session with me now at innereye.org/get started. That's inner dash the letter I.org/get started. This is why I do this work. If you can imagine realizing that this is a part of everybody's life, that grief, that loss, that despair, suffering, discomfort is a part of everybody's life, a necessary part. But then you don't have anyone to turn to, any tools to learn, any practices to help you move through that realization and into action. Where do you feel like you would be if you just listened to this podcast or listened to another story or another teacher telling you that this is part of everybody's life? What would you do? We'd be stuck in awareness hell. We'd be stuck in the state where we know that there's something big and dark and deep, a big storm looming on the horizon, but we're powerless to do anything about it. That's how I felt when I was going through my process. I didn't know how big this storm was going to be. I couldn't have possibly known. But luckily, I did have a tool. I had mindfulness. And through mindfulness, I was able to start to just sit with all of the body sensations, all of the emotions, all of the discomfort of grieving, and just let it be there. I'm not saying that this is the full process, there's plenty more steps. But step number one is to begin to sit with it and to lean in rather than turn away. Because the universe has a way of making sure that we learn the lessons that we need to. For me, my journey was kicked off when I was 3. It took me 25 years of turning away from it, not doing anything about it, accumulating more and more losses through my life, for me to finally get to the point where I couldn't run away from it anymore. And I don't want any of my clients or any of you listeners to have to get to that point where you're forced off the edge. That's why I do this work. I want people to have the tools, the resources, even just the vocabulary to know what's going on and to know when to ask for help and when to sit with it on their own. But the most important thing that we learn from the whole process is to begin embracing everything that is in front of us right now. And to be clear, when we embrace something, we don't have to love it. We don't have to be happy about it. We don't have to tell people about it. It's just a welcoming and an understanding that this is what's here now, not what's here forever, but just for now. So there's a lot of good, juicy stuff in here, a lot of things to explore and to think about. And of course, I have a homework assignment for you. Again, I'm not checking. So if you decide you don't want to do the homework, great. If you decide that it's helpful for you in your process, like many of my clients have, and like I have, great. So for this episode's homework, the next time you hear someone talk about loss or grief, or if you're experiencing loss or grief, whether you hear something on the news, at work, amongst friends or family, or somewhere else, lean in. Stop running. Stop rejecting. Stop turning away from it. Lean in with the intention of just being present with it. And if it's your grief, or if you feel like you've gone in too deep with the emotions of it, keep breathing. Notice where your edge is and see if you can breathe there for 5 breaths. You may be surprised at what changes and whether it feels safe to lean a little bit more, or maybe you want to take a step back. But don't let yourself take a step back just because it feels uncomfortable and it's a reaction that you have. Lean in and breathe. And if you feel like you want to discover deeper, and if it feels like you don't know exactly how to do that, talk to me. If you're looking for a grief doula or someone you know and love could benefit from one, schedule a free breakthrough session with me now. You can go to innereye.org/get started. Again, that's inner-i.org/get started. Sometimes we don't even know that we need to grieve. So having the support or a gentle nudge from someone we love is so important. Thank you, dear human, for joining me today. You can continue this journey by subscribing to the Inner Space podcast for new episodes every other Tuesday. I look forward to talking with you soon and hearing from you. Until next time, keep looking in.